so much time doing what he can to please others before he chooses to please himself. Like me, Iggy goes out of his way to show his worthiness, how good he really is, and it bites him in the buns. It bites him in the buns when he decides to go out of his way and show his mother that he really cares about her by looking for her throughout the story. It bites him in the buns when he chooses to get his name out there in a journal entry at a Save the World meeting or conference at Mo's mother's home. It bites Iggy in the buns when he decides to bring up the idea of going out with Mo to get drugs in the first place, which really started the conflict throughout the story. The conflict of Mo having to pay off Freddie, the drug dealer, by Christmas. The conflict of Mo having to go to his mother's house, his own innocent mother's home, to ask her for just a couple of grand so he can pay off Freddie, the ruthless drug dealer who even attempted to kill him over this money. But if it weren't for Iggy and his acts of asking Mo to go get drugs, Iggy probably would have never have met Mo's wealthy mother and never would have been able to experience the lifestyle that she lived and understand how she got where she was and get where he got in the story. This story seemed to really connect with and rarely illness and how to read literature like a professor. Iggy's friend, Mo, was sick throughout the duration of the story. His mother was extremely worried about his health, and instead of giving him the money he wished for to pay off Freddie, wanted to get his vitals checked first, making Mo envious. He would constantly have coughing spells, some sounding worse than others, and some that would make a deaf man jump. Mo's sickness linked to his weaknesses. He was sick of his cheating father. He was sick of his mother's extremely forgiving attitude toward his father, who had another family beside him. He was sick about thinking about having to pay off his drug dealer. He was sick of it all. His sickness was a way for the author to portray just how sick and tired of everything that he was, just how stressed he was in his own mother's home, just how much of a burden that he has been holding on to since he left home, since he dropped out of school, since he left his family. While walking with Mo to purchase the drugs that ultimately got him into trouble, Iggy was astonished when he entered his neighborhood with Mo. He walked through his neighborhood toward a house he explained as familiar to him. In the house where Mo bought the drugs, Iggy claimed to have seen a gray girl. He claimed that she was the girl that Iggy once played with daily as a child, but now she looked scared, malnourished, and gray. Iggy claims to remember telling the girl that he loved her, just playfully, and wanted to marry her when they were younger. That was the last memory he had with her, and it was one that stuck fondly in his mind, one that stayed with him throughout these years, one that followed him about her. While he sat next to her in the house, she quietly asked him if he still loved her, just ever so softly, and, in return, he slowly leaned in and gave her fragile lips a kiss. This girl, in my opinion, was a figment of his imagination. She was used to symbolize a woman that Iggy could really love. She was used to keep Iggy in line, to keep Iggy from doing things that would get him in trouble. Yes, he loved his mom, but she was never home. And when she was high on some drug. This girl was Iggy's escape, his way to get his mind off of the erratic things going around him at all times, whether in his house or with his family. In How to Read Literature Like a Professor, winter is portrayed as a season of anger, hatred, worldliness, and emotional reservation. Now, I don't know anything. I know that this is how the story of Saint Iggy is portrayed, and these are the emotions running wild through Iggy's mind during the duration of the story. It is winter, like in How to Read Literature Like a Professor. A few days before Christmas break, and a few days right after Iggy has gotten kicked out of school, and Iggy is showing a myriad of hatred for various characters. These characters included his Spanish teacher, his dad's ruthless drug dealer Freddie, who ended up in the grave, his neighbor's ugly baby, and even himself. Iggy could never accept who he was because he always felt like he was worse than everybody else. Because he had gotten kicked out of school, he felt as if he wasn't what everybody else was. He wasn't as smart or as good in school or as anything as anybody else. Iggy almost always shows cynicism for these characters, but also shows how dependent he is on their opinions and the opinions of others around him. Iggy is constantly counters what he's saying in his head and longs to say what he believes will be best accepted in his society. This is shown in a form of dialogue throughout the story, a dialogue that Iggy visualizes, a dialogue that he imagines in his mind that he maybe would have wished he would have said, or that he wanted to say, or that he should have said. And it's always something better than what he really said, because maybe he couldn't get his thoughts together when he was saying what he wanted to say. Maybe his anger towards everybody else hindered his thinking process and disallowed him from saying what is on his mind, or expressing his thoughts, or expressing the feelings that he has inside. Maybe these hindered the way he thought or hindered the way he acted. Maybe it was his hatred or his dislike towards his dad's ruthless drug dealer that created this animosity within causing him to constantly get in trouble at school, constantly get suspended, constantly be out of school suspension, in school suspension, constantly getting written up, keeping his file thicker than a book. Maybe it was his anger towards others that really kept him in trouble, that really kept him disliking his mother's acts, or his father's laziness, or his father's ruthless drug dealer. He is extremely dependent on others' opinions and how others think of him, which is why he thought so heavily on his hearing at Mo's mom's house. This is why he would sit down and think about the output or the outcome, whether he would go back to school or whether he wouldn't be allowed back in school because of his acts. Think about something to say, something great that he has done in his community or for others that he could say that could heighten his chances of getting back into his school, that could heighten his chances of doing something with his life, of making it somewhere, of achieving something, achieving a goal, achieving a lifelong dream, when the world may never know now. In the end, Iggy was walking to the late night service with Mo's mom and Mo, with Freddie in hand because Mo had to pay Freddie off his drug money by Christmas. Mo, sadly, did not have all of the money to pay off Freddie. But earlier in the story, Iggy had read a newspaper article about a young kid who saved a female from a crack dealer. This really inspired Iggy to, change his mindset, try to find something for him to do to change his record and help him to get back into school. So when Mo walked up to Freddie to not even pay him his money because he didn't have it, Mo was extremely terrified that Freddie would kill him. So Iggy decided to jump in, called over a cop. While the cop was running, Iggy took Freddie's gun and shot him, killed him right then and there. In conclusion, the novel Saint Iggy was an exceptional story that taught the lessons of being who one is and moving forward when things are there to hinder an individual. I would gladly recommend this story to any teenager, but definitely one who is going through a tough time and wants to experience a story of someone who is not only not living the best life or is going through struggles. Iggy wanted to help his friend Mo. He wanted to help Mo's mother. He wanted to help his own mother. He wanted to help the gray girl, and he wanted to help everyone in need. Iggy was determined to do what he could to improve the lives of others and put his by the wayside. This is why I would recommend this story to others. Iggy was so focused on the future and focused on his hearing. He was so focused on whether or not he would do good or whether or not he would slip up, and ended up not going. The question is, would the reader be too?